Good morning. My name is Rabbi Chaim Dov Belyak, and I'm pleased to welcome you to another one in our series of programs in the title of Freighted Legacies. Today, we're privileged to have um, a, a new author who has worked very diligently on presenting a series of very complex issues. Her name is Jennifer Stark-Blumenthal.
All right. Well, thank you, Rabbi Beliak, and your incredible team at Freighted Legacies for all of your work. Um, I personally really appreciate your going through the effort to translate this chapter and my introduction into Polish to broaden our discussion. Um, the main goal of this book is to break down the quick defensive rhetoric and nasty assaults that both Jews and Poles raise against the other. Part of that is due to Poles and Jews having competing myths of their shared past. And those competing myths is what we're going to explore today. Next slide. We're on, okay, terrific. So this is chapter 20 that we're discussing today. Clearly, it appears at the end of my book. I do want to make it clear that it is only a part of my understanding of the complex relationship between Poles and Jews over the centuries. Today, we're going to look at the context of this backlash and examples of the backlash. And also, we'll look at an example of resistance to this right-wing backlash. Okay, next slide. Okay, so first let's understand the vocabulary. When I refer to myth, I'm referring to a group's broad understanding of the past. It's an understanding that brings meaning to that group and its individual members. It's passed generationally through family, lore, or just, speaking at the dinner table. It's also passed more formally through education, and it's accepted as truth. Myth reconstruction is a much more conscious process by which an individual recognizes facts and theories that have been ignored by their own group. And by recognizing these facts and theories, the person challenges the group's black and white truths, and often challenges the positive self-image of the group. I do want to point out myth reconstruction is an extremely challenging process because it raises in public spaces surprises, confusion, and conflict from a very messy past. Okay, next slide. Okay, so I would argue that since Poles and Jews have each understood their own group as the most victimized, being the most victimized is part of each of their myths. They have a difficult time acknowledging the victimization of the other, lest it negate their own victimization, right? So this lack of recognition, I think, breeds resentment and ignites defensiveness. If we're looking at their victimization, for Poles, it includes a harrowing 123 years of complete partition and suppression of Polish identity. It incorporates Nazi and Soviet occupation during World War II and all of those horrors, as well as 43 years of Soviet-imposed government. When we speak about the Jews' victimization, that includes being exiled twice from the land of Israel, being forced to leave various countries. Khmelnytsky's 1648 deluge, a rash, many pogroms, and of course the Holocaust. Okay, next slide. All right, so in 1989, with the fall of communism, we have to think about where do Poles go? Where do they go in terms of what kind of government are they going to have? Now, importantly, solidarity, which is what brought down communism, it wasn't just one group leading it. It was actually a very unique opposition of formed by intellectuals, workers, and the church. And it's pretty rare for all three to unify, but they did, and they brought down communism. Post-independence, that unity fractured because those groups had different visions for what the future of Poland should be. So some saw the West as a guiding force and saw their own past from the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth somewhat mirrored in the European Union, in the sense that it was open and tolerant of minorities, and there was a sense of growing and being part of something else. For others, they looked toward the Catholic Church as their guiding force. And this was modeled in the much smaller Polish kingdom, and its very traditional set of values. So next slide. So in 1989, there was a leaning into the model of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth and its embrace of minorities. People delved into all subjects that had been kept from them by the communists or by the communist government, and that included past Jewish life in Poland. What happened was that Catholic Poles or Christian Poles became leaders in preserving Jewish memory. Some examples include the Krakow Jewish Festival that has been going on for 37 years. Academically, universities opened up Jewish studies departments teaching Yiddish and Hebrew and Jewish history. Elementary and high school curriculums developed teaching Jewish culture and the Holocaust. One example is the Tak Skola, which has been renamed the Irina Sendlerova School. But there, teachers demonstrated that students' stereotypes of minorities could actually be changed by immersing them in history and culture via the arts. There are also many examples of Polish communal stewards of Jewish memory. One, since 1990, Brama Grodzka has been discovering and teaching about Lublin's Jews. Since 1996, Bogdan Bialik has commemorated the Kielce pogrom and brought communities together to do this and to educate them about that. horror. Since 2002, the Foundation for the Preservation of Jewish Heritage in Poland has been recovering, preserving, and commemorating physical sites that are significant to the Jewish population. This touches on 200 synagogues and some 1,200 cemeteries. Since 2003, the Polish Center for Holocaust the Polish Center for Holocaust Research opened and has been studying only matters related to the Holocaust and Polish-Jewish relations during those times. And in 2014, the Polin Museum of the History of Polish Jews opened after 20 years of planning. So my point here that I'm emphasizing is that non-Jews have been at the forefront of respecting and preserving Jewish memory in Poland. Okay, next slide. All right, what happens when a society is more open and tolerant is that that society often discovers through research information that's really difficult to incorporate into their story. And that is what happened in Poland. In 2000, Jan Gross's book, Neighbors, was published. That's the one at the top of the screen. It tells the story of the July 1941 massacre of Jedwabne's Jewish community by Polish neighbors. It prompted a long and difficult debate in the Polish public square. And initially, Polish scholars and politicians, while aghast at the information, accepted the challenging memory of Poles. The Polish president apologized for the pogroms. In 2001, the English translation of Neighbors appears, and it creates a much larger, it's an international audience. And all of a sudden, the stakes of Polish shame grow much larger. It's the difference of having a family argument in your home and having it out in the public space. In 2003, there was a Polish government investigation at which corroborated Jan Gross's findings and also revealed a regional pattern of brutality against the Jews at that same time in the summer of 1941. So a Polish identity crisis with this information emerged surrounding World War II, with national shame vying against Polish honor. In 2011, you'll see on the right side, Jan Grabowski published his Hunt for the Jews, which details Poles aiding the Nazis in their hunts for Jews who escaped ghetto liquidations. And he projects that some 300,000 Jews escaped the Nazis, but only 50,000 survived the war. And he points to Poles' complicity in this tragic loss of Jewish life. So these two books and their revelations have had a chilling effect on Poles' self-image as heroes and martyrs during the war, and has crushed Poles' morale. And a response has been a growing, intense defensiveness of the good name of Poland. Okay, next slide. Thank you. Important in our context, for this political backlash in Poland is also the 2003 vote to join the liberal European Union. As you can see, a strong majority voted to join. The right wing opposed it, holding that the EU impinges on Poland's economic sovereignty by mandating what items can be sold. And the right wing holds that the EU impinges on Poland's cultural sovereignty by imposing definitions of sexual identity and of family on a traditional Catholic society, because the EU supports the LGBTQ community and its rights. Additionally, the EU mandated Holocaust education and recognized the Jews' experience during the Holocaust as an unparalleled victimization. Well, that flies in the face of Poles' collective memory as being the Christ of all nations. The far right really fears that constant reminders of the Jewish Holocaust relativizes their own suffering and will lead to the loss of specific stories for Poles and memories and Polish identity. Okay, next slide. So, who and what defines Poland? Poland has a slew of political parties, like so many, but the two that hold the most power are the center-right civic platform, often led by Donald Tusk, and the populist right-wing Law and Justice, known as PiS. Okay, so there's a lot to be said about PiS's origins and its growth. But today we're only going to focus on the PiS party's defense of Polish honor in the face of international scrutiny over discoveries revealed in 2011. PiS has won a landslide victory in 2015, and they led Poland until 2023 through a church-centric social conservatism and a Eurosceptic position. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so the PiS-led backlash is a form of resistance. It's a resistance against the findings of Polish violence against Jews during World War II and Poles aiding Nazis and Jew hunts. It's also a form of resistance against the liberal ethos that Brussels promotes, which embraces the LGBTQ community. We're focusing here today on the backlash against revelations concerning Polish-Jewish relations. But I just think it's important for you to know that with that is also this backlash against the LGBTQ community. So this backlash is demonstrated through education, through the law, and through physical space. And due to limited time, we're just going to review one or two examples of each. But believe me, there's a plethora of examples. Okay. So the PiS backlash on education. So for PiS, they view the study of history as not for the sake of learning what was unknown and reorganizing our ideas, but for peace. History should strengthen the national collective bond. That is the purpose of history, to strengthen the Polish people's bond with one another. And the core history curriculum has focused on developing national identity and loyalty to the Polish nation. And any possible wrongdoing by Poles has been excised from it. Additionally, to promote a Polish nationalist agenda, PiS phased out most teaching about minorities by 2019. Now, to defend Poland's honor, the far right wing, i.e. PiS, has countered Jedwabne and the Jew hunts by weaponizing the Polish righteous. They've magnified the Polish righteous and ignored the Polish traitor. Now, PiS argues that there are more righteous Poles than Yad Vashem has recognized. And important to know, Yad Vashem has recognized more than 7,300 Polish righteous among the nations, and it's the largest number from any country. But the right wing holds that there are so many more Poles who were righteous than have been recognized. Now, they have a point because the criteria are pretty difficult to meet. One, you need documents and such as diaries, photos, or letters, and you know, they were in a state of war. So many of them had been destroyed. Also, Yad Vashem requires that the sort of application be initiated by the Jewish survivor. Now, right after the war, right, many Jews who Poles had aided either died during the war or died thereafter. Many lived behind the Iron Curtain and didn't know about this award. And for those who did know, many still did not contact Yad Vashem to initiate this process because they didn't want to relive the horrors of that time. So I think the nationalist argument has merit, that more Poles acted to rescue Jews than has been recognized. Well, under the PiS government, more close to 32,000 Poles have been recognized as righteous. And that number has their critics who claim that the government has elevated people to heroic heights without any witness testimony and without any documentary proof. And that there has been no reflection on what the motivations of the Poles who acted to save Jews or aid Jews was. For Yad Vashem, there couldn't be any economic gain or any sexual favors provided in exchange for aid. That's not the case here. Okay. PiS argues that Poles who killed Jews during World War II stood on the fringes of society, while those who aided and saved Jews were the norm. In 2019, the director of the Center for Research on Prejudice at the University of Warsaw said that due to peace propaganda, the average Pole believes that 49% of Poles alive during the war rescued Jews. That makes, millions of Poles righteous according to this. And that's just blatantly like not true. So I'll leave that slide. Okay. All right. How do we see the peace backlash in the law? Many of you will recall that in January 2018, the government created an amendment to the Act on the Institute of National Remembrance. Now, this is known outside of Poland as the Holocaust Law. It criminalized accusing the Polish nation or state of complicity in Nazi crimes, and it was punishable by fines and up to 3 years of imprisonment. So this caused quite the stir. And in February 2018, there was an emergency meeting at Polin Museum of the History of Polish Jews. And some 700 people attended. Most of them were involved in researching the history of World War II and, the Holocaust. There was a lot of anxiety for what would this mean for historians who were continually discovering new things. And the historians knew that already President Duda had attacked the Polish Center for Holocaust Research and its researchers for propagating lies. So it was a very difficult time. Due to a surge of global outrage, however, in June of 2018, Peace rescinded the criminal component and held on to it being a civil offense to accuse the nation or state of complicity with the Nazis, and it was punishable with a fine. Okay. Well, in 2018, a book entitled, a very big book, Night Without End, The Fate of Jews in German-Occupied Poland, was published. Jan Grabowski and Barbara Engelking are the co-editors. And it discusses Poles killing Jews during this time period. Jews who were looking for aid and hiding. So critics have argued that the Polish Anti-Defamation League, together with a team at the government IPN, reviewed the book's 546 pages, searching for any mistakes that would discredit it in order to defend Poland's good name. And they found a supposed conflict in the description of Edward Malinowski, who was a wartime village elder of Malinowa. And the Polish Anti-Defamation League found Edward Malinowski's 80-year-old niece, Filomena Laszczkowska, who then in 2019 sued the two historians for slandering her uncle's good name. Now, Edward Malinowski helped a Jewish woman survive the war. That same woman testified on his behalf at a post-war trial concerning his betraying a group of 22 Jews to the Nazis, and then they were later executed. So the Jewish survivor speaks on his behalf, and then Engelking raises oral testimony from that same survivor many years later against Edward Malinowski, saying, yes, he did betray them. The lawyers for Malinowski's niece sought to defend not only Edward Malinowski's good name as a hero who saved Jews, but it went further to defend the right to national identity and pride. Well, the district court in Warsaw found the two academicians guilty. The judge could not make room for the concept that Poles could be just both good and bad and act similarly to the Nazis. However, Grabowski and Engelking appealed the verdict, and in August 2021, the court dismissed the libel case in its entirety, saying that it is not the task of a court to interfere in academic research. Okay, let's look at Peace's backlash within the physical space. Okay, so the Polin Museum of the History of Polish Jews was opened after 20 years, right, of planning. After the announcement for plans to build it, the Polish government created new memorials that it would place in the museum's courtyard. Elżbieta Janicka argues that these memorials were used to emphasize the Polish narrative within the Jewish space. And one example you see against this brick wall is a memorial to, or the Willy Brandt Monument. Willy Brandt was the West German chancellor who in 1970 visited the Polish People's Republic and went in this space to the Warsaw Ghetto's monument, which was already there, and knelt before the Warsaw Ghetto's monument. And in a show of, apology and taking responsibility for the Holocaust. So for the world, the Willy Brandt monument demonstrates that the Holocaust was organized and carried out by the German people, by the Nazis. And importantly, for many Poles, it symbolizes the country's absolute innocence of any complicity in crimes against the Jews. So being that it's inside the courtyard of this museum dedicated to the history of Jews, a visitor would imagine that this monument is expressing part of the Jewish narrative. And one could argue that it functions to suppress the Jewish narrative. Now, on the other side is a street sign. It has the name Irina Sendlerova, who was righteous among the nations. Many of you might know her name. An incredible woman. She rescued 2,500 children from the Warsaw Ghetto. This street sign was dedicated at the grand opening of the museum by government representatives. And you see it at a pathway that leads from the parking lot to the museum entrance. So why would I be critical of this sign to somebody who clearly deserves it, right? I'm questioning the timing of it and the failure to place her act in context. Jews definitely should know about Irina Sendlerova. But it's odd to me that the first name that visitors see associated with the museum dedicated to the history of Jews in Poland is that of a righteous Catholic woman. Okay, next slide. So there has been resistance to the peace backlash, and we see this in a temporary exhibit that the Polin Museum put on to mark the 50th anniversary of basically the expulsion of Jews from Poland. Importantly, the museum director Dariusz Stola had to really think about this, put on this exhibit that was happening in March 2018, knowing about the amendment, the January 2018 amendment, the so-called Holocaust law, and, the repercussions of it. He put it on anyway, because they wanted to commemorate this immense expulsion, and which due to it, Jews experienced thousands and thousands of Jews experienced being fired. There was a forced immigration of nearly 15,000 Jews, Polish Jews from the Polish People's Republic. And in the exhibit, they compared language from the 1968 rhetoric compared with Roman Dmowski's anti-Semitic rhetoric from the 1930s with contemporary Polish nationalist rhetoric in 2018. The peace government was infuriated by the exhibit and claiming, one, that while this happened in the Polish People's Republic, those who did the firing and expelled the Jews, they weren't Polish, they were communists. So that's one way of handling it. They also retaliated by not reinstating Stola to his post, though he had won re-election, and they also pulled grants from the museum that were supposed to be used, for future expenses. Okay, next slide. All right, so in conclusion, one, thank you for holding on for this, I guess, somewhat lengthy discussion. But in conclusion, like any country, Poland is multifaceted. Super important for us to know. And its people raise conflicting visions for their country. The more liberal populists find inspiration from the relatively tolerant Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. And that part of the population emphasizes connection to the European Union and its liberal policies, while the more traditional populace finds comfort in the small Piast kingdom, wanting a more isolated state girded by conservative Catholic values. After the fall of communism, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth model dominated. With surging tolerance, Poles took it upon themselves to learn about the Jewish past in Poland and to continually commemorate it. But as we've seen, political tolerance opens doors to difficult information. And in 2000 and again in 2011, Poles faced the shame of Jedwabne and the Jew hunts. They felt a stinging blow to the myth of Polish victimhood and heroism during World War II. And though some were able to incorporate this information and hold that two truths could be true at the same time, right? That Poles were both victims and victimizers, many could not. And a growing population resented the imposition of this shame. In 2015, the far-right Peace Party had a landslide victory, and Peace crafted a backlash to defend Poland's good name by weaponizing the Polish righteous, bringing historians to trial, and commandeering Jewish space for a Polish narrative. And while there has been resistance to this right-wing backlash, it's not without its consequences. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to, first of all, thank you for this very important and overarching uh, presentation. I think that your presentation leads people to want to get the book and go deeper. This is just the 20th chapter of a very extensive book, and presentation, I'm hoping, has encouraged people to ask questions, and we'll be receiving questions both in the chat and also in the other format. So if you can write your questions, we'd be glad to to have them. I want to begin until we get some questions. Invite. I see we have a couple of questions already. I want to ask you about what the impact of the 2018 law has been on research of the Holocaust. I note that the people that are being sued in court, Jan Grabowski, Barbara Engelking, and so forth, are Polish academics. What has been the impact on their work? And um, um, I hasten to add, what has been the impact on something that we call historical distortion versus historical truth?
Hmm. Well, I think that the law and the dom the strife from the trial really makes those who are looking to go into studying Jewish history, right? It makes them question, is this a good idea? This, it seems like not a good time. Like that it's a problematic environment. So I think less people are going into it. And, the less people you have doing this work, then the message or the opportunity to learn about it just lessens. So I don't honestly, I don't know about Barbara Engelking and Jan Grabowski in terms of, what are their responses? I mean, Jan Grabowski did write Whitewash, which that's since the lawsuit. So, I mean, they're not being quiet, if that's what you mean.
Okay. We have some questions already. One is a general question: where do you think things are going? Is from Dr. Abraham Havivi. Where are things going?
Well, I I think, and I'm taking that side because, in 2007, I was all, ooh, this is amazing, right? Like, this is everybody, like Poland is so tolerant and so open to minorities and to learning about them. It was very, very exciting. And I had to do a whole revamp of my book once peace gained all this power and really changed things. And the fact, however, so a little down on it. However, that's why I emphasize that that there is this large group of Poles who are commemorating and who are very much engaged and dedicated to Jewish memory. But I think, the politics of shame or I often win out, unfortunately. I think we find that here. We can find that here too. People really use it and to boost, they want to boost themselves up. And although Donald Tusk is, back in power, I don't know. I don't know. I'm more guarded now and see it perhaps a little generationally,
Okay. But that's probably the question that will hang over of readers that as they look at the current issues that have happened recently with the cancellation of the Hanukkah lighting, which had traditionally
Yeah.
taken place at the president's residence. And this year, I think we would understand it as a political move. The new president who was elected in the summer, decided that it was not necessary to have any presence of a Hanukkah menorah. I think a year or 2 years before, there had been the presence of a far right wing uh, uh, member of the parliament who used a fire extinguisher to extinguish the Hanukkah flames. We as a group have particular connection because the woman that opposed Braun's acting as a fireman uh, also was attacked to stop him from stopping the Hanukkah flames by one of the people that has been associated with our work in Poland. Um, Many people thanking you for introducing them to many of these issues. Um, I'm curious, uh, what has happened in terms of um, do you have any sense of what the Warsaw Ghetto Museum is going to be like? Uh, this is a new museum that's being um, built and had some controversy already.
Um, Honestly, I do not know what it's going to be like. Hopefully it will um project a holistic message, and telling. What's your view?
Um, well, I've only been able to talk to people who have been involved in the Yad Vashem um discussion of who are the advisors from Israel, and they are concerned that the premise of the museum is problematic. The premise of the museum suggests that while Jews were in the Warsaw Ghetto, there was profound support from the surrounding Polish um, population. So,
Well, that would be right. That would be a carryover of this concept of weaponizing the righteous, of that, you know, so many were righteous. And of course, that's not against those who were, but about glorifying Paul's actions as opposed to recognizing also their um, bad traits during this time.
Right. So history is still continuing to be debated. Looking for other questions from our listeners. Um, uh, let's see. Well, first of all, one of the questions that comes up is uh, this whole issue that has recently arisen around Treblinka. There's been a controversy there. Do you know anything about what has happened there?
So I feel like my head has been in other writing, and so I've been engaged in that. Um, so do you want to tell us about it?
Well, we wrote about it as some issues. The presentation that somehow there was a righteous person selling or giving away water.
Oh, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you meant something like now, like really, like just recently. So there was hmm, in in this drive to um sell the concept of the righteous, there have been boulders placed where Poles who acted to save Jews where they died. Um, and one boulder is in the vicinity of Treblinka. Jews were on, the story goes that Jews were on a train, in a cattle car, and that it was stopped and like desperate for water. And I believe it was Jan Maletka, who a young man who provided water to a Jewish person. And he was killed for that. And for that he should be, praised, right? The problem is that this and this is the same thing, the same issue with much of the monuments that go up for to honor the Polish righteous, is that there is no explanation of the context, like what makes this righteousness, right? Giving somebody water. Well, what makes it righteousness is that other Poles were not giving water. They would only give water in exchange for money and valuables. So that lack of context really, I think, it does a disservice to those who stood up in this very difficult environment. Um, But the peace government had, chose explicitly to sort of not provide that context, that difficult context.
We have a question from one Anthony Polanski and another from Jeffrey Blumenthal, people you may know. Could you say something about the impact of the Trump presidency on these debates? That's from Dr. Polanski. And a similar question, so many parallels to what's happening in the US today related to addressing revision of our own history in America. The push to change the narrative in the Museum of African History and Culture Thought. I know you wanted to talk about that.
So I'm glad you both raised that, and I'm glad you're both here. So thank you for that. Um, I would say that what Trump has taught me, by living through this time period, um, Trump has taught me that often that um, the opposition and people who don't believe in the rhetoric, that they are present, um, even when you who or I who are, a half a world away don't hear about it, right? So because I know where I stand on this issue in the United States, and I would label myself part of the opposition, and I would say that I've gained a lot of respect for the various oppositions that have taken place in Poland over the centuries, from rebellions against the Russians, to 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 I sorry, I got lost in that rebellion. But in the 1860s, the rebellion against the Russian partition, and and then the drive the among positivism, the drive to to create Polish identity, even though they didn't have, if you will, the infrastructure, right? They didn't have the government helping them. It was just this collective drive to can recreate Polish identity. So I really, really respect that, because I can see that how a government can wear the opposition down, right? Uh, we're just individuals, people are people. The government is a system, and it's so much harder for an opposition to form and to retain any kind of strength day in, day out for years or decades. So, that's one thing. And yes, Jeff, I would say that, yeah, Poland is not the only country that's experiencing an illiberal backlash. I would say America is experiencing an illiberal backlash as well, with a desire not to, with a desire to protect the good name of the United States by suppressing information about genocides here against Native Americans, and wanting to suppress information about the slave trade, and actually how bad it was for those who were enslaved. So, yes.
Thank you, Jen. I want to make that uh, uh, a kind of concluding remark. I think that bringing it home to understanding the complexities of what nationalism and supranationalism, nationalism with a very clear revision of history has done, not only in Poland but also in America. That's a very critical place for us to stop. And I want to thank you for the book, which I want to encourage people to acquire and to read. I look forward to inviting you back. I understand you have a new direction in your writing career, and we look forward to hearing about that. I want to turn for just a moment now to the fact that we are going to be inviting people to participate in the um, upcoming events that are on our list. And here I'm sharing you the screen from a program that we began in August with Professor Joshua Zimmerman, who will be returning February 14th to talk about his newly published biography of Józef Pilsudski, a key figure in Polish history, a central figure, pictured here on the right, being received by a community of Jews in Poland. Józef Pilsudski began life as a socialist, became a general, became a rather controversial figure in the political world, and was viewed by many Jews as a hero of the Poland that included Jewish and other minority participation. The plan for this is that we will again share a chapter in Polish for people to be able to join us on February 11th. The notices will be out, and we encourage people, of course, to acquire the book. As we look at a critical chapter, we're also going to be joined by a Polish historian who has written on Pilsudski, Professor Zundel, and we look forward to Dr. Zimmerman's presentation and response. Both historians have written about Pilsudski. I want to encourage people to continue to support our work. Freighted Legacies requires your generous participation, and you can go to jewishrenewal-in-poland.org and make a contribution. This is the time of year where we emphasize trying to make sure that we have enough funds to continue. We have approximately a dozen additional programs about at a monthly pace. I want to acknowledge the presence of Marek Józefski, who has been interpreting from English to Polish, Marżena Szymanska, who's been doing the same. The person who puts all of this together, Dominika Zakraszewska, who keeps us on the straight and narrow electronically and so forth. And there's many other people that we require to put these programs together, and we appreciate your support for our work together. I just want to conclude with one announcement, and that is this last week, the board of Friends of Jewish Renewal has made me the president, and the new CEO is Dr. Jonathan Cohen, very important leader in the reform movement with a very beautiful and complex background. We are very blessed that he is a part of our Friends of Jewish Renewal work, and we want to welcome him. And thank you all for participating. Thank you most of all, Jen, for this enlightening and overarching presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.